Welcome to the Pod Like a Pro podcast.
This is a podcast dedicated to sharing tips, tricks, and personal experiences to help you to podcast like a professional.
I'm Nat.
And I'm Liz.
And we're from Pod and Pen Productions, coming to you from a Awabakal country in New South Wales, Australia.
So far we've talked about what you need to consider before you seriously start working on your podcast. And if you've missed some of those episodes, we do suggest you go back and have a listen because we've got lots of information in those as well. But you might be thinking, and I know that this pulls up a lot of people, me included, what about the tech?
Yes. Just tell me about the tech. What do you recommend? What are the microphones? What are the recorders? What do we need to get to make a podcast?
And I know I just want someone to tell me what it is and then I can do it and then it's easy. But unfortunately, it is, as you say, it's not just about what microphone you buy. You actually need to know how to use it correctly.
That's the big thing. Yeah. See, I love all this tech talk. I love the hours and hours that I can spend online looking at Reddit conversations about which microphone's better and the pros and the cons. But that can get very, very overwhelming very, very, very quickly.
I'm the overwhelmed person over here who does not want to know. I just want to know what I need to get and then tell me and I'll get it. No worries. So tell me, Nat, what are some of those basic tips that can really help someone out when they're first starting to try and get their head around all the tech?
Well, you just have to know that basically you need something to record with, some kind of microphone. You need something to record onto or into, like a recorder or a laptop or a computer that has software on it that will allow you to record, and then something that you can edit with. Now, depending on how much production you want to do, that could be something quite simple or it could be something a bit more complex.
So how much would all of this tech setup cost?
Well, I mean, I think it's how much can this tech setup cost? Because the answer is it could cost you a lot of money, but it could also cost you not much money as well. So it's a pretty big question.
And then again, I think it comes back to that idea of the main thing is not so much how much you spend, but knowing how to use the tech that you've bought appropriately and correctly.
Yeah, but completely, because you could spend thousands of dollars on a microphone, which is quite easy to do, and they look amazing and they have all these amazing capabilities. But if you're talking into the back of the microphone, it's not going to sound that good. It's probably going to sound just as good as what it would if you had a very poor quality microphone that you didn't know how to use as well.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're being a bit funny there, like who we're talking to the back of a microphone. But actually, there's lots of microphones that look similar at the front and the back, especially those podcast ones that sit on the table. And so it is really easy to do.
And those microphones, some of them actually have a dot on them to show you the front and the back.
There you go.
So to help you out. So it's quite easy to do. So it is taking a little bit of time to know what you are using and how to use it. That's the main tip with all of this. But when we look at the things that you need, what would you recommend, Liz, for in terms of a microphone? If you want something, I mean, and I think we'd always say with all this stuff, keep it simple. If you're starting out, keep it simple. You can always build your kit up as you go along. So what would you look for in a microphone?
Yeah, look, if I was planning a podcast from home and I'm looking at using some podcasting software and putting it into my computer, the most easiest and obvious type of microphone is one with a USB connection. Now, a USB connection just means that it plugs into your computer, which is great. That's what you want. The other type of microphone, which is the XLR microphone, will not plug into your computer, and you actually will need an interface. You'll need an extra piece of technology for that to work, for you to record into. Also, go into your local electronics store and ask them for recommendations. They will know a good podcasting mic, or they should know.
And we've also got a link from our show notes to our recommendations as well.
In that PDF, we actually tell you exact microphones at different price points.
And you can get a USB mic for $100 or less in Australia at some of the big chain stores as well.
Now that we've got our mic sorted, we need something to record on or into. So what would you recommend to record on?
Well, so if you're recording over the internet, then you can record on a program like Zoom, which has some limitations if you're looking at recording audio, because it's just recording over the internet and it's just recording both sides of the conversation onto the one file, onto the one track. Whereas there's other programs that you can subscribe to, such as Riverside and Descript. And the way that they actually record is that they record on your computer, they record on your guest's computer, then they send those files to the cloud, and then you download those files. So you're actually getting the sound of the microphone at the location where it was recorded. So you're getting better quality sound, but that's probably going to cost you a bit more money.
It does cost you a little bit of money, but it's probably worth it in the end because that quality will be so much better. I've also noticed that sometimes when you're doing the recording, the sound can sound a little bit sketchy. Maybe the internet's dropping in and out a little bit, but the actual recording itself does not have that in it. So that's a really nice thing as well. Whereas if you're over Zoom, it would have that dropping in and out. And then I guess the final part of this is the editing. Mm-hmm. So editing is a tricky one.
Editing's the one that people usually say before they start a podcast, I don't really want to do much editing. I don't want to do...
Don't blame them.
And yes, because it can take a bit of time, but it depends on the level of production that you want. So if you're wanting to go for a pretty streamlined way of producing your episodes, you can do some editing within those podcasting software platforms. It's kind of like a Word document. So you can edit words out and...
via the transcript. Yeah. So it generates a transcript and you can edit those words in and out, but it has limitations. It can be quite clunky with the breaks, so it depends on how good you want yours to sound. That's why we would suggest that if you are recording on podcasting software and you do want to do the edits from that same podcasting software, if you make a mistake, that's fine, but just stop, take a breath, start again, and you'll be able to edit that out much clearer than if you're trying to change track halfway through a sentence, for example. Otherwise, you might need to go down the route. If you really want it to be super fancy and lovely, you might actually need to get some audio editing software outside of that, which is fantastic. These are the things that we use, but it does require some learning. Yeah,
so those programs allow you to mix your audio with more control. You can do finer editing. You can take those ums out, and if it's over breathy or if you want to pace it a bit faster, you can do that a lot easier. And there's a few options with that as well. There's programs that are free to download and use, such as Audacity. There's also Reaper, which is a one-off fee, but then you could go crazy and spend a lot of money with Adobe and other companies as well.
So again, it's all about how much you want to learn, how much you want to spend, and how professional you want to sound. But I think with editing, I always say that you will save so much time in editing if you plan and prepare your interviews well, because nobody wants to be sitting around editing an interview that stops and starts and stops and starts. It's not a good flow and it's not a good practice to be in. You also don't want to be editing an interview that you actually only know what you're talking about halfway through because you haven't properly decided what you're going to be talking about. But that preparation that happens before you press record is worth, every 10 minutes that you prepare before you record is probably worth half an hour in the editing suite.
Because you don't have to record as much as well. So you don't have to go through as much when you're editing.
Absolutely.
As we mentioned before, we have a link to our suggestions for tech in the show notes.
Now you can follow and subscribe for more podcasting tips, tricks, and personal experiences of people who are just like you, who have overcome the tech hurdles and are now making a podcast.
If you want to learn more about podcasting, you can sign up to our newsletter and read about our Pod Like a Pro podcasting course at podandpen.com.au.
Until next time,
happy listening.